So I just played the Cosmic Shake, and it was more than a little underwhelming. After falling in love with Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, I decided to go for this game next, and I loved it. For the first few hours. After that, I still liked it, but a bit of the magic subsided. And if you're watching this, you must be at least mildly interested in knowing what changed inside my pea brain, so let's dive into it. This is my review of SpongeBob: The Cosmic Shake. If you don't care for video game story deep dives, don't fret, we won't be here long. This game's story is as dry as a hollow carcass wasting away in the desert. No, I'm not being harsh. Don't get me wrong, the dialogue is really good and so is the voice acting, with one really awful exception. Seriously, I wish I knew who gave the green light for Glubby Glub's voice.
No. Ever since you threw Bikini Bottom into utter cosmic chaos, all visitors have vanished from this once beautiful oasis of fun. And with them, their adoration for me. Do you know what becomes of a glove without love?
That aside, the narrative itself is rather boring. During a trip to Glove World, SpongeBob whines about being bored and wishes he could be part of something cool. A magic witch named Cassandra shows up out of absolutely fucking nowhere and gives him a special bottle of bubble soap. All he needs to do is blow a bubble and make a wish for whatever he wants to happen. Sponge and Pat waste no time sharing these bubbles with everyone in Bikini Bottom, only for them to rip apart the fabric of space and time, sending SpongeBob's friends into the void and completely destroying the town. Sponge goes to Cassandra for help, and she gives him costumes so he can travel into the altered worlds created by the cosmic jelly. From there, things become formulaic. You travel to a new world, interact with the characters, platform your way to victory, use the bubble soap to bring Sponge's friends back home, lather, rinse, repeat until it's over. There are side quests to tackle as well, but I'll cover those a bit later. After exploring every world and saving all his friends, Sponge returns his stock of cosmic jelly to Cassandra, who turns against our heroes in a fashion nobody could have seen coming. Not to worry though, one bad boss fight later, and believe me, I'm coming back to those too, Cassandra is defeated and all is well. Yep, that's pretty much it. So what's the problem? Well, it's not all bad, in fact a lot of it's quite good. Like I said before, the dialogue is high quality and the humor is both well timed and well delivered.
Who would have thought that a magic potion from a mysterious fortune teller in a sketchy wagon could backfire?
However, I might trade it for some of that miraculous Wrinkly's Pro Aging Cream my coven has been buzzing about.
Ah!
They say it can wrinkle your skin enough to make you look twice your age.
That was fun! I wish we could do it all over again!
I probably chuckled or laughed at least 15 times, so I'd call that a win. The characters all act how you'd expect based on their established personalities, but there are still enough wrinkles thrown in to prevent you from predicting what you'll hear before you hear it. Also, I love that NPCs talk when you get near them. It adds more depth to the world and makes it feel more occupied.
Nothing to see here except a giant traffic jam.
The overall story is really childish and simplistic, but for a SpongeBob game, that's to be expected. Nobody wanted a Persona-esque narrative from this game, nor did it need one. However, there could have been just a little more effort put in regarding Cassandra. I will give the writers praise for not trying to insult my intelligence by pretending Cassandra wasn't going to be the final villain, but she really only exists for the sake of having someone around to be the final boss at the end. It's never really explained why she does what she does or what her goals are. Sure, she wants to take over everything, but that alone isn't a good motivation for a villain if you don't dig deeper. Honestly, Cassandra could have been written out of this story and very little would have changed. Sponge and Pat just as easily could have stumbled on the magic bubble soap themselves with no magic witch needed. And I also have to throw shade at King Neptune for a second. Oh yeah, he's in this game too. He's quick to crucify SpongeBob for helping Cassandra collect the cosmic jelly, but in my view, he's just as responsible for the shit show that unravels. If Neptune knew who Cassandra was and knew the danger she posed, why didn't he interfere in the situation earlier? Why did he wait until Cassandra had enough jelly to damn near take over the entire ocean? It was just dumb on his part. Cassandra really is the major problem in the narrative though, and her character should have been handled better or at least handled differently. Again, if you don't really care about story elements, you probably won't be annoyed by any of this, but I personally found it quite frustrating. It's very perplexing as to how Cosmic Shake manages to botch some of the most basic qualities of a collect-a-thon platformer. Before I jump into what doesn't work though, I want to give praise where it's due because this game succeeds in several aspects. The level design has loads of variety and different challenges to keep you on your toes. Maybe you're traversing the jagged structures of Wild West jellyfish fields or conquering the final massive room of interlocking pathways in the medieval sulfur fields, or navigating a pool of lava in the prehistoric kelp forest. I could keep going, but you get the idea. I was a huge fan of the sliding mechanic in Battle for Bikini Bottom. I always loved surfing down the crazy slopes in Sand Mountain, so I was pretty excited to see that mechanic make a return for this game. Most of these worlds feel like strong, cohesive areas that naturally flow, and they're different enough from their original forms that they don't feel like lazy repeats of BFBB. Notice I said most of the worlds. There are 7 total in the game, not counting Bikini Bottom itself, and I would give positive marks to 5 of them. The medieval sulfur fields were my favorite area to explore in the game, from climbing the towers to platforming over the river to making music to impress Princess Pearl as you once again watch Squidward fail to accomplish his dreams.
Hear ye, hear ye. Regretfully, the yellow sponge and his annoying balloon shall be royal bards at the princess's most excellent slumber party. Thou may enter the castle. Don't screw it up.
In contrast, Pirate Goo Lagoon just doesn't do it for me. It's meant to be a hybrid of Goo Lagoon and the Flying Dutchman's Graveyard, but it never really clicks and feels too similar to regular Goo Lagoon. Jelly Glove World is also a letdown for me. It makes narrative sense for this to be a world since the game started with a trip to Glove World. I'm assuming the devs were going for an it ends where it began type of thing. However, the world itself is rather short and lacks the unique charm the other worlds have. And since the main gimmick is just playing through a jellified version of Glove World, it falls flat as the effects of the cosmic jelly are a staple in every world, not just Glove World, so it's not unique. And this might be a bit nitpicky, but I don't love the color palette. Feels a bit too much like Rainbow Vomit. And speaking of Rainbow Vomit, let's talk about the enemies. To put it simply, they aren't much fun to fight. Their designs remind me of the Unversed from Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, and not for good reasons. Most of them either have crappy attacks requiring zero effort to dodge, or use strategies that drag out the encounters way too much. The Burrowers are an absolute bitch to fight. They take 3 hits to defeat and they constantly go underground, making it impossible to damage them. They only come up when you do a Grand Slam attack, which requires you to jump twice, then do a ground pound, but I swear it only works when it wants to. The big jellies suck to fight for the same reasons. 3 hits to kill and they spend way too much time being unhittable. The combat slows down the pace of the game far too frequently, as there are many points where you are locked in an enclosed area with a large number of enemies and you cannot progress until you defeat every single one. And I am a man of my word, so let's circle back to those boss fights I mentioned earlier. I think it's a stretch to even call the majority of these encounters boss fights. Often you're just trying to complete a certain objective while the boss launches mildly annoying ranged attacks at you. There are a few exceptions like Sandy's boss fight in Downtown, but overall you fight the environment more than you fight the actual bosses. The worst example of this is none other than the final boss against Cassandra and Mutant Squidward. The design of this boss is actually damn cool. It's just a shame you don't actually fight it, because all you do is use the reef blower to fire jelly at Cassandra 3 times. You never have any interaction with Mutant Squidward. This design strategy is certainly not new, but it sets up conflicts that never end up happening and makes the payoff for saving SpongeBob's friends feel a bit hollow sometimes. And before moving on, I should mention some of these boss fights hold the player's hand way too much. I understand not wanting the player to be confused, but you have to also trust your players have an IQ past the single digits. I don't need a long panning shot to show me the precise location I'm supposed to attack before the encounter even starts. At least let me attempt to figure it out myself before you beat me over the head with the solution. I know some people will defend this by saying it's a kid's game, but kids are not stupid. They know how to use their brains. Trust them to do it. Getting back to the payoff for achieving certain things not being worth it, we need to talk about the collectibles in this game because goddamn, how the devs managed to mess this up so badly, I will never know. There are two types of collectibles in this game, doubloons and jelly. What can you do with the jelly? Well, you can spend it to unlock new costumes for SpongeBob to wear during gameplay. Which is fine, I guess. As for the doubloons, those are also used to unlock costumes. Okay. Well, are the costumes at least good? Oh boy. Okay, here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with having jelly and doubloons be used to access costumes, but why require both of them? Why require two separate types of collectibles that do exactly the same thing? What's the point? It's like having a currency for your currency. It just doesn't make any sense. On top of that, this is the only use for these collectibles throughout the entire game. There's nothing else they can be used for. They don't open up additional pathways like shiny objects do in BFBB. Hell, Sand Mountain is pretty much inaccessible in that game if you don't have a sizable number of shiny objects. But in this game, you effectively have zero reason to care about the collectibles if you don't want to get the costumes, which I mostly didn't. This poisons the value of the side quests too, since there's no worthwhile reward for completing them other than a thanks from one of SpongeBob's friends. If you're gonna ask me to revisit worlds after completing the main objectives and extend my playtime by several hours in the process, you need to make it worth my time. This game doesn't. After I finished the main story, I was effectively checked out. While I liked going out of my way to explore side areas, I was doing it more so due to natural curiosity rather than any reward I would get for it. It really sucked the life out of me every time I got to a hard-to-reach location, only to be rewarded with more jelly I knew I would never use. Having irrelevant collectibles in a 3D collectathon platformer is just crazy. They could have at least allowed you to play as SpongeBob's friends if you collected enough doubloons. I'm sure it wouldn't have been that difficult considering Sandy and Patrick were already playable in BFBB. Some of you might think I'm making too much out of this point, but it genuinely floors me as to how the devs took something that was completely functional in their previous game and dropped the ball on it so hard in the sequel. It's wild. Graphically, this game is a gem, but that's more of an expectation than a luxury nowadays. In a world where technology is as good as it is, the excuses for releasing a game that runs poorly or looks like trash are few and far between. Not like that stops anyone from trying. But there's nothing to criticize here about this game. The characters, textures, shadows, lighting, blah 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 are all wonderfully crafted and the colors really pop just how you'd expect in a SpongeBob game. The only minor problem I have to bring up is the transitions. I don't know if it's just my PC or what, but this game had some funky transitions, particularly with loading screens. They are super awkward, not so much due to the quantity, but rather when they happen. I'm gonna play a clip from the ending of the final boss right here, and tell me if you notice anything weird. So, what do you think? I don't know about you, but that loading screen was just rough. It's not that long, but it completely destroys the flow of the scene, and this happens a lot throughout the game. Even when there's no loading screen, these transitions are still awkward because the game is struggling to load everything fast enough, leading to massive stutters when you go from a cutscene back to the game. It's a pretty small issue overall, and as I said before, it could just be my PC, but as the game went on, I noticed it more and more, and I thought it was worth mentioning. As for the sound design, it's good. Won't be winning any awards, but it gets the job done. The music is more atmospheric and less about delivering statement pieces, but the immersion is still there. And since Sweet Victory plays during the end credits, I'll say I got my fill for impressive vocal tracks. The Cosmic Shake is a good game, and I got plenty of enjoyment from the 8+ hours I spent on it. Unfortunately, it fails to stand out from its peers in a highly competitive genre, and even fails to establish itself as better than Battle for Bikini Bottom, which it is technically a sequel to. I tried to limit the comparisons between the two in this video, but avoiding it outright was just inevitable. The Cosmic Shit gets a 7.5 out of 10. Really fun platforming, level design, dialogue, and graphics. Not so great narrative, combat, or boss fights, with some minor presentation issues to boot. For a $40 price tag though, I'm not disappointed. I'd say this game is worth a look, especially if you're a Battle for Bikini Bottom fan. Just don't go in expecting some crazy amount of innovation over that game. Treat this as its own standalone product and you'll be fine.